Give me a second. Perfect. All right. So thanks for everyone joining our Tech Talk today. I am Regina here at the Tech Academy. And today we have Tearyn Cox, who is a professional recruiter from Inside Global, and she's going to give us some advice to land a job. And thanks for being here, and take it away.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, nice to meet with everyone today. Again, hope everyone's staying cool. I sit here in our Portland, Oregon office. So again, my name is Tearyn. I'm one of our professional recruiters. A little bit about my background, been with the company for about 2.5 years. I'm actually slight plug on track to be our team lead next year. So when it comes to our team of recruiters here in Portland, we have about 45 to 50 in our whole office. And then we have our account manager staff too. So really kind of what I did is I created a quick PowerPoint to give you a brief overview about what Inside Global is, what the heck staffing is. I know that before I started this job it was confusing. And my guess is if you have your resumes posted, you've probably been called. So what does that mean? How can we market ourselves and then turn it over to you at the end for any interview prep tips, anything that you can do resume wise, any questions that you guys have. So before I start things out, any questions or any comments? All right. Gotta love it. That means they'll all come at the end. So if you want to save your questions, jot them down on a piece of paper while we go through things, feel free. I haven't used Google Meet before. So my guess is that it just shows the same thing when I share my screen. But here.
Yes, it probably will. I'll let you know as well.
Okay, cool. Okay. Okay. Let me know if that worked.
Yeah, that looks great.
All right.
Oh, it looks like you got out of it. Oh, perfect.
There we go. Okay, perfect. We'll get Inside Global, just to kind of give you a little bit of background of who we are, what we do. So Inside Global was founded in 2001. We're actually headquartered out of Atlanta, Georgia. And we have now about 55 offices nationwide. So I'd say one of the benefits for that, right? We've all seen a lot of jobs go and have remote flexibility right now through COVID in the pandemic, which means that we don't get to just look at opportunities here in Portland. We have a network nationwide. So when it comes to different companies that we partner with, some of them are smaller mom and pop shops, medium-sized companies, enterprise level as well. But really, I'd say that's the most unique part is, again, it's not just, hey, here we have 5 clients here in Portland. We do have a good, nationwide presence. And something that's a little bit unique is every position that we work on is something that we have built a relationship to achieve that position. So essentially what that means is we have direct relationships with the hiring manager, the team lead who sits in on the interviews, and who has that, end decision to decide to present an offer, which gives our, recruiters a competitive edge, because that means we can really be business partners to you through the process, from that initial phone call through, interview preparation, any questions you have on your resume, help and see it full life cycle throughout there. So again, that's a brief overview, just as far as how long we've been around, and, a little bit about our nationwide net. Here's another example. So we've added a couple more on here through the pandemic, actually. We just don't have physical locations there yet. They're all remote locations. But also if you think about, different pay rate or different industries you're targeting, I know that some of the, candidates I work with in the engineering space are really excited about automotive. So, they, target some of our clients in Michigan so that they have opportunities with Ford. Other candidates, especially in the IT field like yourselves, Silicon Valley, huge network. Everyone's stoked about an Apple, a Microsoft, a Google, and those corporate partners along with Cisco. And as you can see, we have a really good net in California too. So as long as you're open to working different time zones, really it gives you more opportunities. I know not everyone loves waking up at 5 a.m. It's not something you have to do to secure a role, but just wanted to give that a little bit more nationwide, seeing the picture. And we actually just opened our first Canada office. I think one of the most common questions I get is, hey, Insight Global, where are your global offices? Can I work for England? We're working on it. Haven't gotten there yet. The pandemic has been a little bit of a hindrance internationally, but that is the goal in the future. And then here are just some examples of the Fortune 1000 client base. We do have companies that we have as our national accounts, which means we work with them in multiple different locations, or we have just our, personal accounts that are in a specific place. One that's not up here, but my guess you're very familiar with, Nike. Huge one. Columbia Sportswear. I know they've been a little bit on a hiring freeze with the last year with being in retail, but they're also ramping up. Adidas. I'd say here in Portland, we have a lot of manufacturing firms, but that doesn't mean that they don't hire IT people, right? They also need help with their website. I think sometimes they almost need more help on their website, depending on what engineering firm you're looking to work with. So just keeping that an open mind of, depending on if you're someone that pictures yourself in a corporate setting or something a little bit more smaller scale, you want, a small team, tight-knit environment, or you just like working on your own where you're like, hey, I want to reach out for some help, but please just give me the job and I want to own that project. All these different clients offer different things. And again, kind of circling back to what I mentioned about us having relationships with those managers is we can give you a clear picture of, hey, maybe this team at Microsoft, even though they are a corporate company, you don't like that, they operate as a startup. We can give kind of a little bit more insight as far as what to expect and just a team environment. I think we all know the reason why people leave jobs is usually because of management or lack of growth opportunities. So we want to do our best due diligence on the front end to know what you're looking for, both technically and as a person, to make sure it is a good long-term fit. Also, I tend to talk fast, so please interrupt me if you're like, Tearyn, you're going too fast. Okay, perfect. So this is a little bit more of the logistics. So what are our service offerings? We have contract to hire, and direct placement. Does anyone know what a contract is or what that means?
You're basically like working for a certain period of time and you're not like full-time staff. Yeah, Ricardo, you're an independent contractor. And to hire means like if it goes well, they might hire you on full-time.
Exactly. That's spot on. And I appreciate you unmuting yourself because my screen is blocking me seeing faces. So I appreciate you giving that definition. That's spot on, right? Contract is essentially just, like you said, usually it's more project-based. So sometimes you'll either have a strict contract where the company has an initiative for 12 months and they're looking to bring on, subject matter experts in the field or in that software to help with that project. And once that project is over, there might not be, another project that has budget approved yet. And that would just be a strict contract. But I think the contract to hire is what a lot of companies are moving towards right now. Candidate wise, it's more appealing, especially with, some people. In the last year, I worked with a lot of candidates who had been with a company for 5, 10, 15 years and were laid off. And it is a candidate's market right now, which is great for you all, but it's also fast moving. So it's, hey, how can we work with our clients to make sure it's a better fit, a longer term fit, and fitting what you're looking for? And longevity is definitely one of those things. So contract to hire, usually it's about 6 months to hire or to perm. So within that 6 months, we actually as recruiters have something called an engage process. So you have your main point of contact from beginning to that offer. the recruiter that extended you that offer has a touch point with you every 4 to 6 weeks. So while you're on contract, we have those touch points with our consultants to essentially say, first off, are you liking this? Sometimes people use contracts to, gain an experience they haven't had the opportunity to, and that either leads to absolutely loving it or not so much. I like to say, at least personally, I've done a lot of due diligence most of the time. It's loving the role, but also just understanding how the team's doing, if they're, enjoying the project, if they've moved teams. And that way, 6 weeks before that contract either is going to end or get converted, we already know that answer. And I've actually worked with multiple consultants in the past to redeploy them at other companies or help them get other jobs and not have a gap of employment in between, just because we took that extra step to engage through the full process. It wasn't like we said, hey, you're on contract with us, here's the offer, here's your first day, and never spoken with them for another 6 months, right? That's not how we go about our business. We want to make sure that it's a truly relationship building through the end. And then the last form of service we offer is just direct placement, which is exactly what it sounds like. Hey, we help with the recruiting efforts on the front end. You would talk with a recruiter and an account manager, and then if the company decided to move forward and extend an offer, it would be an offer letter from that company directly. So those are kind of the 3 different ways. I'd say mostly here in Portland, we see contract to hire or a lot of permanent lately, actually. But with your bigger companies like Columbia and Nike, they usually operate on a 12-month contract with possible extensions to 18 months, just to kind of give you at least a further Portland perspective with what you'd be looking for. We already talked a little bit about this, but the last thing I'll say is just key differentiators, right? We talked about relationship building. We talked about sense of urgency, because we do have relationships with the management team where if, Mr. Bob or Sarah didn't answer about, a candidate's resume, we can just call that person directly and say, hey, what are we missing? Let's bring this to the top of your inbox. And we usually see feedback within it's now in 24 to 48 hours, just with how fast the market has been. We're usually, I'm sure you guys have seen, it's multiple interviews at a time, multiple people in the running. So anything we can do to streamline that process is going to be huge. All of our video interviews have taken over in person, just with COVID and making sure we're taking, protocols that way. But that's really kind of a couple additional differentiators. And we also, the last thing I forgot to mention is we do utilize references a lot. So say, I know sometimes candidates, right, you're applying on Indeed, you're applying on LinkedIn, you're not getting feedback as to why you were either rejected or, brought into a first round interview, but not moved to the second. We utilize references to say, hey, if there's any hesitations, let's call someone past that you've worked with, get them to speak on that skill set and send it over to the client to see, hey, actually, I know you had that hesitation, but here's where they might have been nervous and not explained it. Or on the vice versa, getting direct feedback. So once you go through an interview, you know exactly where you can improve in the next interview, and where you impress them. So that's kind of a brief overview in that. And really, that's kind of all I have logistically. It's pretty straightforward when it comes to the process, what we work with. So I know that you obviously with the Tech Academy have different programs, whether that's C#.net, Java, Node, React, anything within there. So kind of wanted to leave it, like I said, more open-ended at the end to see what questions you guys had about the process, about interview prep, just in general. So we can kind of chat through that and it be a collaborative, open forum of what you guys are seeing in the market.
Yeah, you guys can go ahead and ask questions either by unmuting yourself, or you can chat in the chat box, whichever is easiest for you.
Okay. I'm trying to pull up the chat. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. Okay, I see Ricardo. I saw that you put independent contractor, no W-2. Were you asking if our contracts are on a W-2 basis or if it's 1099? Just to clarify that one.
I think that might have been when we were talking about the contractors and he was explaining what it meant, basically. I don't think it was a question. But It looks like Ryan has a question. He says, what are the gaps that you see candidates needing close most frequently occurring in today's market?
Totally. Yeah. And I'm going to hop on Ricardo's question. All of our contracts are W-2. They're not 1099 or independent contractors, just to clarify that. But when it comes to gaps, what are we seeing? I would say it's mainly the ability to speak on experience. With the pandemic last year, employment went up, right? So how can you differentiate yourself in different ways, experience-wise? I know your organization does a great job about GitHub, adding those LinkedIns, maybe doing assessments on LinkedIn. I know there's some other tools like IKM assessments or different things where you're able to show your experience in those languages. And it kind of says, hey, you know, I have this experience and I can apply it. I think sometimes candidates have really been underselling themselves because they have been in the job market for a little longer where they're automatically disqualifying themselves. That's what I've seen. And then also just, let me see here, being all over those tools like LinkedIn. I think sometimes now that we are fully remote, there's not as many opportunities to go to meetups or, you know, bring your resume into different locations or HR teams. So I'd say the social media component is huge. And also just reaching out to taking ownership of your career and reaching out in that sense. So hopefully that answers your questions. I guess to clarify, if that didn't, feel free to let me know if that answered your question, Ryan.
All right, so it looks like Stacy was a developer 8 years ago, and actually she's looking to get back into IT. Do you have any advice for her?
Yeah, totally. And when it comes to developer, are you able to disclose like what kind of developer?
Yeah, can you hear me? Is my mic working?
Yeah, you're
okay. Yeah, I build calc engines for life insurance companies and financial software. Okay. But I'm really kind of hoping to do something with healthcare operations.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I would say this is the hard part, right? Because when you've had past experience in an industry and you're getting back into the industry, there is going to be a little bit of a pay cut. So I would say being open to those more junior to mid openings and being able to prove your experience and grow within a company is the biggest advice I would give. I've worked with some candidates who are trying to jump back into a field where maybe they've, you know, done that experience 10 years and they're looking for a senior role now because years of experience wise, it is more similar there. But I'd say like targeting a company that is excited to have you grow within them and give you that opportunity to show your experience. And then 2, transferable skills. Whether that is, hey, you know, I've had experience in the industry. I know some of our clients like Kaiser Providence look for people that have healthcare experience that also have IT experience and say, okay, they know the industry. We can train and work with them on the new skills that they have and see where they grow from there. Does that help?
It does. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Okay. It looks like Devin had the next question. I have been looking to get into tech for quite some time. Most of my experience with recruiters has been for more advanced roles. Do you see many entry-level roles? This goes back and forth. I know here in Portland, I have seen more senior roles as of late, just with what budget looks like. but nationwide, it is more entry level because now like hiring is officially opened up, where you either have your person that's really senior, that's overqualified for the role, you have someone who is a recent college grad that's exciting to grow into, and then the kind of in between. So as of lately, as within like the past 3 months, I haven't seen many entry level roles, but have you targeted like a mid-level? Because I would say any job description that says 2 to 5 years, they most likely will consider someone that is entry level. And you'll have a better shot there because a lot of companies won't post an entry level, they'll post a mid-level, but they'll interview people that are a recent college grad. So that's just kind of how budget is approved wise. But hopefully that helps Devin as far as, hey, maybe when you're applying to jobs or asking, hey, do you have anything that's targeting like 3 to 5 years of experience? I know I am qualified. I know I have these skills. And I want to be able to speak to that in an interview and have them consider me for that role. Okay. And again, feel free to jump in if I didn't answer your question in full and you want to follow up. It looks like the next question we have is from Jason. How are the software developer opportunities for nonprofits, education, and smaller businesses? So as a company, we don't work with nonprofits unless it's like a Kaiser or bigger, just because with an agency that logistically, right, they are paying for those services to help with recruiting, to help fill, because their internal HR team doesn't have the bandwidth. So a lot of nonprofits aren't able to help compensate with that. Education wise, that's not a sector we have tapped into a lot. Smaller business wise though, we do work with some private companies. I don't know if anyone's heard of like Tech Equipment. They sit in North Portland. They're one of Oregon's largest private companies. They're a true like dad runs the company, walks around on site. They're the first one that comes to mind. But I'd say smaller businesses right now are building out either their development team or they're more on the infrastructure side, help desk support team. So some candidates I've worked with in the past have said, hey, I just want to get into IT. Those two teams have the same manager. They connect in a structure wise. Maybe that means I'm going to work help desk for a year, get cross-trained and still able to use my development skills and grow and switch over to that team. So that's a strategic move that if you are targeting smaller businesses, I've seen be successful with a couple past candidates that I've worked with. Okay, Dante. Okay, you mentioned different working environments with startup versus corporate. Do you have advice to figure out what environment works best for you? Yes, 100%. I think it's just knowing your learning style, right? I hate to stereotype, but it's every company kind of has their own thing. So if you think about more of a corporate setting, usually the clients we work with in a corporate setting have less time for training because they have more expectations from their stakeholders because they're making more money. So in that sense, okay, am I someone that is a self-starter? Am I resourceful with my training? If someone tells me once, am I going to document it and kind of learn on my own? Or do I want something that is really collaborative? I get to work with a team every day. We solve problems together. That's more of that startup mentality as opposed to a true like corporate enterprise level of, hey, let's be resourceful. Let's try things one more time ourselves and then reach out for help. So that's a bare minimum. Really, it differs company to company. And the hardest part is you can't feel that out unless you're in an interview. But I would definitely recommend trying out both things. And during the interview process, straight up ask, how do you go about training? Do you have any mentorship programs? And what are your expectations for someone starting out in their first 30, 60, 90 days? Because that'll kind of give you an idea of, okay, how are they phrasing my expectations in the first 3 months? Can I do that on my own? So, okay, perfect. Okay, Chandra. Okay, as a student, should I focus more on networking or GitHub projects to be prepared for the industry? Can you clarify what your definition Oh, sorry, networking. I read that as an IT, networking as in making connections. I would say it's a combination of both. It's finding the sweet spot. And also just knowing that, okay, maybe if you chat with a recruiter or you chat with a manager at a networking event, add them on LinkedIn right after. So that way you're utilizing your time. They're seeing that you're connected and you can use them in the long run. But also in interviews, I've had multiple managers bring up GitHub projects, and that be a tool where someone that just finished, a program similar to you has literally shared their screen and said, hey, here's the project I've done. Here's how I've used the technology, and used it as almost like a portfolio, like it is. So I'd say a combination, but definitely I would lean more towards GitHub, just because networking kind of comes with going to different events and being intentional of maybe different companies that you're targeting, where, hey, I applied to this role. I'm going to go connect with their HR point of contact and say, hey, I just applied for this position. Here's my GitHub. I'm really excited. Let me know if you received my application or something like that. That ownership of your career. Okay. Oh, thanks, Ryan. Okay. I'm glad that makes sense, Jason. All right. Deca. Okay. I worked in the automotive industry as an electronics engineer for 3 years. My university major was robotics. That is amazing. I want to get into programming and assisted driving systems. How should I go about that? Okay, first off, huge, great tech stack. I know that once Daimler goes off their freeze, it would be a great company for you to target. Or also some other companies like DW Fritz, they focus a lot on this. I would say your past experience caters a lot into semiconductor. I know that you mentioned that you want to get into assisted driving systems. How should you go about that? I mean, your past experience shows that. I think it's just a matter of knowing which companies offer that. So that would be more research that, unfortunately, here in Portland, we don't have a lot of automotive. I think the main automotive is Daimler and tech equipment. And throughout that, with Intel's presence, I mean, I swear, we all know every time you drive past that campus, there's a crane, there's something building, and there's everyone that's on site, where you could have those transferred skills into helping with some of their machine learning components and artificial intelligence that would be similar. But I know that's not exactly what you mentioned you want to do. So staying here local, that would be what I recommend. But also assisted driving, the first thing that came to mind would be like a Tesla, a Daimler, a Ford Motors, just with how their budgets look and how they're able to be innovative and be an industry leader. Okay. How have your clients looked upon folks from tech boot camps in general? Okay. I would say it depends on how a candidate is able to speak on their experience. And show the confidence with what they've learned. I've only seen clients stray away from a candidate from a boot camp is if they're not able to explain what they've done, where they'll just say, something short and sweet like, oh, I have experience with C#. And the manager will kind of prompt and say, okay, what's your experience? And it's not able to give a clear example. So I'd say just practicing that, knowing your strengths. That's the only reason I've seen a candidate that is from a boot camp not get moved forward, is just with how someone's explaining their experience. But again, I know that's person to person. And I think also, I know we talked about GitHub a lot earlier, but just including your projects on your resume and making sure that it shows that whole portfolio to show the depth of your experience as well. Okay, Ricardo. Do you know what the job prospects are for future devs in the financial sector? I have a degree in accounting and was hoping that would give me a leg up on the other applicants. Okay, financial sector. I actually don't know the answer to that question, Ricardo, but that's definitely something that I can research. I know as a company nationwide, we have financial hubs with like Wells Fargo and more things on the financial. feel free to, and I'll drop obviously my contact information here and we can have that shared, but that'd be a little bit more brainstorming that we could do together, just because I agree that accounting degree is an advantage. It's just a matter of, okay, how can we tailor that for the right person? Okay. Would you have any advice for finding a job at a tech startup? I personally have never worked with any startups. I've worked with candidates who have worked with startups, and usually what it seems is that they're either through Facebook, which is just funny knowing Facebook's history and how they started. They've joined like groups on Facebook or groups on LinkedIn and social media groups where it's kind of just like a natural conversation of, hey, like we just got funding here. Like, is anyone good at this? And then moving forward in that process. So I'm sorry, Austin, that wasn't a great answer, but it seems more organic with the people I've chatted with who have worked with startups in the past. Okay, yes, thank you for dropping my LinkedIn. I'll also drop my email as well, just so that way, if you do email me, we can have your resume right there. Everything's all in one package. Okay, I live in an area with very few tech opportunities. So outside of remote work, I will likely have to relocate. What is the current market for companies willing to relocate candidates for in-person positions? Are you only open to in-person positions, John? No, okay, you are open to remote. Okay. I would say if it's a permanent opportunity, I've seen people relo and pay for relocation. Contract to hire, they wouldn't pay for relocation. But most job opportunities in the field that you guys are in have been fully remote. I know that some companies are doing the hey remote through COVID, which is an interesting phrase, and then transferring afterwards. So I think that's really what you're targeting. But I would say if it's permanent, as long as you're able to express why you're interested in that location, that's been the biggest thing. I know that some clients are a little bit hesitant to relocate candidates just because how fast the job market is moving. Some clients have been burned with extending a relocation offer and that person actually backing out. So that's the only thing I've seen. But again, that's company to company. So kind of depends there. My previous experience is 10 plus years of sales and management. Now that I'm pivoting to a tech career in software development, how would I best leverage that experience, specific roles, specific companies? I would say, I think the biggest strength in that would be communication and highlighting that experience, right? Sales, management, everyone wants a member on their team that looks out for others and would be a good teammate. So leveraging it in that way. Specific roles, I think that kind of goes back to what we talked a little bit about earlier when transitioning from like a healthcare to a developer. Their only concern might be is now that you're switching, if you're automatically still wanting that management role. So I think just addressing that straight on and expressing if you have those leadership desires down the line and just willing to learn. That's been the only thing that I've seen in the past is someone that comes from sales and management automatically wants to be in a management role within tech. And it leaves the person interviewing a little bit like off-putting just because it doesn't seem like that person wants to grow and get to know their organization before making that vertical move, if that makes sense. So that would be the only thing that I'd say is, again, targeting that mid-level role. Specific companies is really open. Obviously, if you can find a marketing focused company, a lot of companies are, focusing more on search engine optimization, Google AdWords. That goes hand in hand with developers as well and building out what that UI looks like. So that could be a huge advantage. And then also, yeah, I would say specific roles, just depending on what tech stack you are, would differ there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Those were all really good questions. So I'm making notes of the ones that I didn't know the answer to, which is always exciting. I know I don't know the answer to everything. Would you say that most of you are just kind of starting your search? What issues have you been running into when trying to apply for jobs? Or any success stories that you want to share too that could be helpful for other people in the group to hear?
Yeah, so I think my biggest issue is I'm the person that used to be a programmer and then I went into healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, well, one, I just don't see the types of jobs in healthcare that I would want.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, I really have never taken a programming class. I just did it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for me to reconcile the, job description with what I'm capable of, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a reason why when I message candidates, I only include the day-to-day. Because, if you see all of the like must-haves and pluses on a job description, it's overwhelming. So what I would say is if you believe in your ability to do 70% of the things on that job description, between 60 and 70, apply.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Yeah, because managers will write job descriptions for sometimes a unicorn. I've had to have that conversation with clients in the past where all of those expectations aren't realistic for someone to have. So if you as a person can audit your own skills and say, okay, I fit 60 to 75% of that job description, I'm going to quote unquote shoot my shot with that role. The more shots we take, the more chances we have for interviews, right? So I would say that's the biggest advice I can give for there, of just not ruling yourself out. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm currently in law enforcement. Now that I'm starting a career change, is there a certain job market I should focus on? I think with any career change, it's just what's sparking your interest and being able to back up why you're interested in that. I know that that's usually one of the first questions I ask candidates when they, have either changed from tech stack to tech stack or, a totally different position. It's just a matter of saying, okay, this is what I'm interested in. And again, I know I keep using the golden word of communication, word of the day, and communicating. But I think that's the exciting part with a career change is there's so many different markets. So I think it's also just, again, trying to get your resume out everywhere and seeing where you get the hits back. And if you're liking the conversations you're having with those parts of the industry or those industries, maybe focusing in on Googling top companies in that industry, narrowing it down, and then targeting them for roles. Okay. Devin, I've been looking for about 2 years and can't seem to get past the application. I've worked with resume writers and career coaches, and I can't seem to get moving forward. Okay. Would you say, feel free to answer this. Where have you been applying? Has it been all online, like LinkedIn, Indeed? Just kind of curious there as far as where the applications are going. Okay, LinkedIn, Indeed. Okay, I would say short story is LinkedIn and Indeed are all buzzwords. Like being blunt, like how people are filtering through LinkedIn and Indeed is Command F. So knowing like what words and so if you're going through a job description and you notice the same words keep being used, those are industry buzzwords, right? So I'm not saying do not falsify your resume. This is not how this tip is gonna come off, but utilizing those buzzwords to your advantage and putting them in your resume, has that something that you've tried? Because it sounds like just maybe the way it's written, even with the coaches, is the resume that is being applied is not aligning to that specific job description. So I'd say buzzwords, or even it takes extra time, but tailoring your resume, right? If you see that that role is for a SQL developer, okay, maybe I'm going to put, I love data analytics. I enjoy this. This is like why I'm excited about this role, and your projects are going to be more focused on that program. So I'd say it's a combination of buzzwords to your advantage and tailoring your resume. And then also with the underselling yourself, it's so cheesy, but I've like just role playing the questions. I've had multiple calls with candidates where we get on either a Microsoft Teams call or it's just over phone because they don't want to look at me in the eye. And they're like, hey, let's just practice. Tell me about yourself. The scariest question ever. Hell, I'm a recruiter and I don't even know how to answer that. But basically it's just practicing those two. I think role playing is such a silly word, but it really does help. And if you have a good relationship with the recruiter you're working with, they should be able to know the manager, at least know the company and similar questions they ask to walk through that. For example, Providence, they in every interview ask about values. They ask, hey, what do you know about our company values? Knowing that, practicing those questions and being educated, because the more confidence you have in your answers, the less likely you are to undersell yourself in that. So hopefully that helps, Devin. Yes, Philip, moral of the story, shoot your shot. That is it. Okay, perfect. Okay, any other questions? I have one last shameless plug for our website. That basically, I can drop the link in here, but our website, we relaunched the beginning of the year in January. So now it has all of our active openings nationwide. You can filter by zip code, you can filter by remote, you can filter by contract to hire, and permanent, anything within there. So I'll make sure that we drop that in the chat so that you guys have access to that. But really enjoy you guys taking the time, especially on a Friday in the heat before the weekend in the summer, to chat with me. If you have any questions, I will say I usually am more responsive over email, but now I am really investing in my LinkedIn. I know it's a tool. I want to practice what I preach. So feel free to connect with me on there as well and ask any questions throughout your journey, whether that's interview prep, initial positions, anything works. Also, if you do see a position on our website that does spark your interest, you can just message me that requisition number directly and I can streamline the process. It's not like you're applying through our website and getting a random call from a recruiter. I have access to that. I can pull it up and I can reach out to my colleague directly and say, hey, do you have people interviewing? Are you open to more candidates? Because the last thing I like to do as a recruiter is waste someone's time. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that someone sees success and has time to implement what they're looking for. So feel free to message that to me directly and we can go from there. It looks like we have one more question before hopping off from Rebecca. So I'm transitioning into tech, but I'm older, so I have many years of experience outside of tech. How much of that should I put on my resume the last 5, 10 years? Great question. That goes hand in hand with tailoring your resume. I would say because your tech experience is newer, you're pitching yourself as a junior to mid candidate. So anything between 5 to 10 years, usually candidates have put like the last 6 or 7. And then also what you can do is you can put your education at the top. That's usually what you see in a mid-level candidate. You'll have your education at the top, experience after. And in a more senior candidate, you'll see experience, education on the bottom. So that hopefully helps resume wise, putting the education at the top, saying, okay, here are the skills I have. So that way, when they look at your resume, they're seeing tech straight, because we all know that we remember the first thing we see and the last thing we see. So hopefully that helps Rebecca as far as building out that resume. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, again, thank you guys so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me. Appreciate all of your guys' time.
Yeah.